Today's show is part 2 of my conversation from last week with guest Damon West. Our conversation went long, and he is such a dynamic man with an incredible story that I wanted to break it up into 2 episodes. Damon West is the best-selling author of the books The Change Agent and this one here, The Coffee Bean. Get yourself a copy. He will tell you all about what it means to him to be a coffee bean. If you didn't watch last week's episode, I encourage you to go back and watch it, then watch this one. I don't want you to miss a thing.
And I remember thinking, Lisa, this is something I can understand. And I thought to myself, man, if this guy shoot me straight, this old man just told me the truth. He just gave me the game. Because the power is inside me means the power is not in the hands of the criminal justice system, the guards, the other inmates, the physical prison I'm in. No, it's in me. And if the power stays inside me, then, well, maybe I won't just survive prison. I can thrive inside this place. And it was the perfect message for the world I was in. And that's the power of the message that I go around sharing with people all over the world. It's a story of my life, but it's the message of the coffee bean in there. And that's how I was able to transform my life. I went into prison, this world, it's an upside down world where violence is the only language that everybody speaks. I mean, you become fluent in violence. Either someone speaks it to you or you speak it to them, but violence is the language you have to get to know while you're inside that prison. And it was a baptism by fire. The first 2 months of prison was nothing but fighting. But after the fighting was over, and I'd earned my right to exist, I had a chance to start working on myself and trying to become that coffee bean. And it took a lot of work. But I tell people all the time, I had to change my mindset in order for me to get where I am today. I had to quit looking at prison as a punishment and start looking at prison as an opportunity. Because inside of every adverse situation, there are opportunities. And they don't always just present themselves. They're in there. But a lot of times you're going to have to dig deep to find those opportunities. And as my buddy Ed Milet likes to say, Ed says that life doesn't so much happen to you as it's happening for you. Mm-hmm. You've gone through some serious adversity in your life. Cancer survivor, you're a widow, you know what serious adversity looks like, which means you have a lot of perspective on what a bad day looks like. Mm-hmm. This is another thing that I try to tell people and try to make them understand. We have this tremendous gift of perspective. You know, we've had events that have happened in our life that were difficult, but they gave us a ruler, something to measure what a bad day looks like, right? Every day that you wake up and you're not having to go through getting over cancer or chemotherapy or the days right after your spouse passed away, you know, you're having a pretty good day if you're not dealing with that kind of stuff. But sometimes we have to remind ourselves. We think that, hey, this is really bad, but it's like traffic. You sit in traffic some days and you're mad, you're irate, you're upset. But other days you sit in traffic and it doesn't bother you. Is it the traffic or is it you? And it's always you. It's always your mindset and how you see the situation in front of you. So I changed
here's the thing with you. Okay, with Mr. Jackson, for example, I wonder how many times he told that story and gave that example and how many people he impacted. But you're the guy who wrote The Coffee Bean. So you took something that could have just gone over, not over your head, but not, you wouldn't, maybe had been so thoughtful about it. So in that moment that he tells you, do you take that with you right away? You're able to disseminate that information and go, okay, now, but you aren't in prison yet. So you don't even know how you're going to use that information.
Yeah. And look, I mean, to be honest with you, after 2 months of the fighting in prison, I was becoming the egg. I didn't want to be the egg, but I didn't know how to be a coffee bean. I'm angry. I'm mad. That's one of the hallmarks of being an egg, is just being mad all the time. I was mad at Jackson even. I was mad at the guy that gave me, you give me this story about this fable about this carrot, this egg, and this coffee bean, but you didn't tell me how to be a coffee bean. And I'm sitting there going, how am I going to do this? And really it was one of my first cellmate in prison, Carlos, man. Carlos was about 5'4", a little Hispanic guy, a little bank robber from San Antonio.
Oh yeah. I've heard you talk about him. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Served 99 years for a bunch of bank jobs. Good guy though. But Carlos is telling me the one night when I'm telling him the story of the coffee bean, he's telling me, look, man, you're not a coffee bean. And the way you think, you're not going to be a coffee bean because you have to change the way you think because your thoughts control your actions. And he tells me, you have 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to become the best version of yourself, to become that coffee bean. But it's up to you every day on if you want to be a coffee bean. And I didn't have the answers immediately. I had the coffee bean message. And I'm going to tell you something about the real Mr. Jackson in a second. They'll let you know you can have the knowledge of the situation, the message of the coffee bean. You could have the right messaging to get through life. But if you don't put it into work, if you don't get up every day and work on yourself, it doesn't matter what message you have if you don't have the action to follow it up. Everything in life is about taking action and taking control of the things you can't control. And it took me a while to understand that there were only 4 things I could control. I could control what I think, what I say, what I feel. And what I mean by that is like what I do with my feelings. Do I talk about my feelings? Do I do healthy exercise to take care of myself? And I control what I do, what I think, what I say, what I feel, and what I do. And a lot of the lessons I learned about being a coffee bean, I learned from a program recovery. Because inside of a program recovery that I got into, this 12-step program recovery, I learned how to get outside myself and be more selfless instead of selfish. And that was a big turning point for me, because my entire life, it was always about me. Every relationship I had in my life was about what it could do for me. And I look back on my life, and I was never a good partner in any relationship, not as a boyfriend or as a son, as a brother or friend, anything, because it was always about Damon. But I got into program recovery, and I learned a lot about servant leadership, about serving other people. And these are the things.
I know that you got, you said you've said you had all the access you could have wanted to drugs in prison. And I heard you talk once about the time you almost did cocaine. I think you said you were reading your Bible at the moment.
Yeah, I in the bunk reading my Bible. My cellmate.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And I was going to ask you, when you in those kind of moments, like when you're fighting to keep your freedom in prison, to not be part of a gang, to keep your promises. I know a lot of people ask you, why don't you have tattoos? You're keeping that promise to your mom. When you are close to doing cocaine and you've been drug free since the day you were arrested, how often is what your mom said to you a part of just the awareness you carry with you every single day? In that moment, do you hear your mom? And the thing about it is, sometimes I think we have to really quiet ourselves to hear God sometimes. But
Sure.
You can hear your mom's voice.
I can hear my mom's voice, but more importantly, I could see my mom's face.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought back to my mom. Matter of fact, in my autobiography, The Change Agent, I talk about this, about my mom's birthday. She's celebrating her birthday, coming into prison to visit me. And I remember thinking to myself, man, I just cannot believe this is what I've done to haven't honored my mom better than what I have in life. That her son that she loves so much has made choices that didn't just lock me up. I locked everybody up. No one goes to prison by themselves. You take a lot of people with you. And I hear my mom's voice, but I see my mom's face more importantly. And it's the face that I see leaving the courtroom that day when they're dragging me out of there. My mom was stunned. I mean, everybody's stunned. I just got sentenced to life in prison. But think about 5 minutes after that, she's removed that stunned look on her face. She comes in and has a stern conversation with me. She's a very tough woman. Yeah. Very tough. But I think women are tougher than men, by the way, when it comes to emotional stuff like that, especially with their children. I think that women are better equipped than men are to do that. I mean, I don't know why that is, but that's just my opinion of it. Having put my mom and my dad through some serious stuff and seeing other men that have put their families through stuff, it's always the moms that are in there. The moms never give up.
Yeah. I wonder too, you talk about recovery, and I remember at one point you'd said you were going to go get involved in the program. They bring the program, is it AA or NA that you're?
AA.
Yeah. So they bring AA into prison, and you're thinking there's going to be a couple thousand people there. Yeah. And there's 50, you said. And what struck me about that is I read a statistic recently that for every one person who shows up, there's 50 who should or could. Yeah. And so I thought that was interesting that there were 50, and each person represented 50 more who could have, then you would have got that big number that you might have expected to see and hoped to see.
Yeah, with 3,000 people in the unit, I mean, and I've heard the numbers, 80% of the people that are locked up have substance abuse issues. That's 2,400 people that could potentially be at this first AA meeting I'm going to go to. And man, I'm thinking we're going to have the meeting on the rec yard, the chapel. Man, my little slip, my hall pass basically says go to the chapel. I'm like, there's no way. The chapel's not big enough for 2,400 people. You need a rec yard. You need to bring guards from another unit. This is going to be like a Rolling Stones concert, Lisa. But the next morning when I went to my first AA meeting, there were 50 guys. That's why I could be in the chapel. The chapel was big enough to hold 50 guys.
Right.
But I knew I was in the right room, because when you're in a room like that, you realize that that's 50 people that got up to work on themselves, to try to find an answer, to live in the solution instead of living in the problem. Just a little more on that. Whenever I would get back from my meetings on Wednesday morning, that's when we go to the AA meetings in the Chapel of Hope. It was called the Spiritual Awakening of Sober Offenders. That was the name of our group. And I would come back to my pod on the Life Sentence building, and I'm talking to the guys in there that I know that are addicts and tell them about what I'm picking up in an AA meeting. And in the first step
And they're
of
not
AA
going
is,
to meetings. These
no,
people?
no, they're not. No, that's working on yourself. They're not there to do that. They're
Okay.
A lot of those guys are there to whatever makes them feel good in the moment, which is a horrible way to live. But the first step says that your power is over, well, alcohol and AA, but I say drugs and alcohol. Your power is over drugs and alcohol, and that your life had become unmanageable. So that second part of the first step is that your life had become unmanageable. I can get these guys far enough in the conversation that they can say, okay, I admit that I'm powerless over drugs or alcohol, but my life isn't unmanageable, West. I'm like, dude, you're wearing a white uniform, man. Someone's going to tell you when you can go to the bathroom, when you can go to the shower, when you can go to the chow hall or the rec yard. You don't have control of your life. That's the height of unmanageability. But, you know, we don't always see these things that are going on in our lives because we don't want to see, because that requires you to take some accountability and make some change and grow. Growth takes place outside your comfort zone. A lot of people are afraid to grow, Lisa.
Yeah. I was talking with a gentleman last night at a group I was visiting, and he was talking about how a lot of the addicts that he interacts with are being habilitated as opposed to rehabilitated because they didn't have anything to measure. You know, he grew up like you in a really good home and loving parents, and those parents are still supporting his, you know, choice to get well and to get help now. But so many of the people I'm sure you interacted with, they never had anything to gauge what life is supposed to look like, or what their options are, or what is hope to begin with.
Yeah. And I mean, look, not everybody's dealt the same hand at the table. I had a great hand dealt to me in life. I won the lottery, especially when it came to my parents, because my parents, Lisa, I was sent to a prison that was about 5 miles from where I grew up, which is unheard of really in Texas. They're supposed to send you to a prison as far away from you as possible. And there's over 100 prisons in Texas. And Texas is a big state.
Yeah.
And, but I ended up in a prison 5 miles away from where I grew up. My mom and my dad came to see me over 150 times when I was in prison. 150 visits, Lisa. I mean, no one got that. If you had 5 visits over 5 years, you're the richest man in prison. I had a visit almost every weekend. If it wasn't my parents, I had family members and friends and other people that would make sure that people were coming to visit me, except on one day of the year, they'd never come visit me, Mother's Day. Mother's Day is the busiest visitation of the year inside of prisons all over America. Because remember, everybody's got a mom. And so my mom said that first year I was in prison that we're going to leave that table open on Mother's Day for another mother to come in and see her son. So
because for some of them, that's the only day they visit. So your mom
they visit. So my mom was like, let's make room for those other moms. I mean, moms are special, Lisa. They're dynamic, selfless people.
So when you were in prison and you get the 65-year sentence, and obviously you got out sooner than that. Tell us how that happened. And I mean, you were there 7 years and months, right? Yeah,
7 years and 3 months. The parole board comes to visit me. I'm up for parole.
And this is your first time up for parole.
First time up for parole. Wow. My family and I, we don't think I'm gonna make parole because no one really makes their first parole. I figure I got to do about 10 or 15 years before I get out of this place. But I've done everything I'm supposed to do. I put my best foot forward. I go to the parole office, and the lady comes to see me from parole. And she's like, listen, we've heard about you, the change you made in yourself. It's very evident, but the change you made in this prison is what got our attention, because I was able to change the dynamic in the prison. And so the parole lady was like, if you could be remembered for being anything in life, anything at all, she said, tell me what that would be in just one word, go. And I was like, useful. I just want to be useful, because I think everybody wants to be useful. But I told her, I just want to be useful. I can be useful inside this prison, or I can be useful out in the free world. November 16th, 2015, I walked out of a Texas prison, not necessarily free. I'm not a free man. I'm anything but a free man. I'm on parole till the year 2073 in the state of Texas. So, I mean, every month I see my PO, Ms. Braggs. I pee in a cup, I pay my fines. If I want to leave Texas, I got to get permission from Texas. But I'm not worried about parole because I'm a coffee bean. And I got out of prison as a coffee bean and, started working on, going around speaking to audiences where I lived.
Here's the interesting thing about you is that, so you were a leader of a football team. You played D1 football and all that implies in Texas, for those who know. And then you were the leader of the crimes that you committed. You were
quarterback of the burglary crew.
Yeah, you were in charge of all of them. And then you became a leader in prison. So it stands to reason that when you get out of prison, here you are now in this astounding leadership role. We all have a purpose. There's some things in my life I wish I could change. Wouldn't want my son to have grown up without his father, no matter what I've learned from it, ever. Most of my grief comes back to what my son is missing. But also I've learned so much about myself and the way that I can help people and I can hold hope in all of these things. And I listen to the things that you've said on other podcasts and the things that you've written, and your message is so clear that I wonder, obviously you'd want to spare your mom, but I can't imagine another path that would have made you who you are to the degree that you are now.
Absolutely not. And I get this question asked me a lot. Would you change anything if you could? And the answer is no, I wouldn't. And I know that might sound callous to my mom, to my victims. I hurt a lot of people to get it. I didn't physically hurt people, but I hurt people in different ways to be where I am. But I believe that God has a path for us. And that path sometimes has to be a rocky, stumbling path. Some of it more rocky for people than others. Obviously, mine is a very rocky path that I had to go down, but I don't believe
it could have been even worse. It could have been even worse in prison.
Yeah. I mean, I could have been dead. I mean, but I don't believe any of it happened by mistake. And I think that, and I can tell you this is when I'm walking out of prison, I literally hear God in my ear telling me, you're going to work for me now. And as long as you're working for me and this is about me, you're going to have this life that people are going to think is unbelievable, because it's going to be. But the minute it becomes about you, the minute it becomes Damon's show and not God's show, you're coming back to this place. And so that's literally like what I'm hearing in my head, the voice of God, when I'm walking out of this prison. And so I know what my mission is and I know what I have to do every day. And I'm better today than I ever was at any other time in my life. Like you pointed out, all the different leadership attributes that I've had, ever since I was like in 3rd or 4th grade, I had teachers telling me, you are a natural born leader, Damon, but you're going to either lead people the right way or the wrong way.
And you've done both.
The fact is I did both. I've done it good and bad, but I was never, even though I was a good quarterback and I was the leader of a football team and then I was the leader of a burglary crew and then I was a leader inside of prison. Today I get the opportunity to lead in a different way because I've got the right purpose behind everything I do. And the purpose is to serve other people. That's the secret sauce. That's the people are like, man, I can't believe your life. And I'm like, hey, this is all because of a servant's heart. When you go out in life and you look for ways to serve other people and help other people, and you don't worry about what's in it for you, the stuff that you want, the stuff that you need is going to happen. Every morning I say the same prayer to God. Put in front of me what you need me to do today for you, and let me recognize it when I see it, because I don't want to miss that. In my faith as a Christian, I believe that if I take care of what God needs me to do for him, he'll take care of my needs too. Not my wants, but my needs. And it's been met every time that, in life. The stuff that's going on in my life, Lisa, I could never have predicted. No one could predict this. No one, it blows me away, Lisa. Some days I wake up and I'm like, I cannot believe this is my life. A lot of times I wake up and say, this can't believe this is my life. I was talking to John Gordon's wife the other day, Catherine. And I was like, Catherine, I still can't believe this is my life. I can't believe this is what I've been called to do and been chosen to do. So it's really incredible.
One of the things that we can end here, but one thing I wanted to talk about is in recovery, you talk about unselfish, honest, pure, loving. And if you hadn't been able to take the self out of the work you're doing, like I talk to a lot of people, whether they're going to come on the show or I've met them when I've gone to speak at things, whatever it is, a lot of people think they don't have a story, or maybe they don't have the audience that you have, or the smaller audience that I have, or the Ed Milet audience, whatever that looks like for other people, and they don't want it necessarily. But I'm a huge believer in storytelling and its ability to heal lives. And you don't have to stand on a stage, and you don't have to have a show, and you don't have to have all of these ways of reaching people, because how we live is telling our story, and how we impact just our corner of the world with how we're living. So even if you were just living this life the way you live it now in your town, and you never got on a plane like you did today in between our talking, and all the things you're going to do tomorrow, I just commend you for the storytelling you're doing, and for listening to God and knowing that, here you are in this purpose. And as long as you keep God in it, then the rest takes care of itself. There's no greater
Absolutely.
gift for a storyteller.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And you're absolutely right. You don't have to be on a stage. You don't have to be traveling around from city to city. I get to talk to a lot of men and women that come out of prison. And I haven't done it so much since COVID, but I'm going to start back up in Beaumont, where I live. The Texas Department of Criminal Justice will let me talk to people coming out of prison. Literally, they still smell like prison, right? This is their first couple of days out. And I talked to them about, this is your chance. This is your chance to turn it around. But you're either going to do one of two things. You're either going to build a bridge for the next man or woman that comes behind you out of prison, or you're going to blow that bridge up for them. Because the people that interact with you, they're going to make a decision on how they see a formerly incarcerated person. But you have a story to tell, and you don't have to be on the stage. I tell them, you don't have to be on the stage that I'm on doing this and be at that level. There's a kid in your neighborhood that needs to hear your story. There's someone that lives in your city that needs to see your example. Mm-hmm. This is what we're all there for to do, because how we carry our struggles in life and how we overcome our adversity gives hope to other people in theirs. And that's really what life is about, helping the other person out.
Well, I'm so grateful for our conversation today, and that I was able to fit into the time that you have. I know you're up to so much good. So I'm just grateful that you spread some of that good to my audience. And I've been looking forward to this, and I'll be thinking about it for days to come.
Yeah. So thank you. And thank you so much for your grace. And look, you've got my number now. Stay in touch.
Yeah.
I really appreciate the time with you today. It was a great gift. So thank you for the gift of your time.
I thank you too.